Hi, I'm Don, and this is The Hobbyist Geek. Welcome back, y'all. Looks like we're going to be starting off with pack 3 of our Build the T-800 project here. And we have all of our parts from packs 1 and 2. So far, we've been focused on the right arm and the head. And what do you think? You think pack 3 is going to continue with those or introduce another element? What say we crack it open and see what we got? Okay, here is the beginning of pack 3. We have stage 21 here, and we have a right shoulder joint, and we have 2 of these right shoulder joint fittings. We got 4 metal shafts. However, you should be careful with these. There are 2 different sizes of metal shaft here. We've got the lower jaw joint cover and some screws. All right, to begin with, you can take a look at the shoulder joint fitting, and you can see there are 4 holes here. And on these extra little bits, 4 little posts, 4 posts go in the 4 holes. You need to super glue them in, and you need to do it actually on both sides. And once the glue has dried, you should have something that looks like this, ready for installation. All right, this next bit's gonna be a little bit tricky, and you really need to be careful. You're gonna have to cut these things loose, and on the back, you'll notice there's these cavities in the center. Okay, you're gonna have to super glue this thing, but you don't want any glue getting in that cavity. If you do, you're gonna hinder the motion of the jaw. Now, once you've got the glue in, you can place it into these cavities here on either side very carefully. Make sure that glue doesn't get anywhere on that screw. That way you can ensure that the jaw will be able to operate as it's intended. And when it's done, it should look like this, nice and clean, which is actually really, really awesome. The only caveat being you can't actually test it until you get some power to the motor in there, which is unfortunate, but still, it does look nice. All right, next up, we're going to take those metal shafts and we're going to glue them into the skull here. These larger shafts here, that's where the larger metal shafts go. The smaller holes down here, that is where the smaller shafts will go. Make sure you don't get anything here, or for that matter, really anywhere else but inside these holes. When you're gluing it, you don't want this to attach itself to anything other than that shaft. And that is what it'll look like when it's done, folks. No idea why we're gluing these metal shafts in here. I think that would have worked just fine if they molded it into the skull, but c'est la vie, it's there now. All right, next up, we're actually going to fit the skull to the head here. You're going to want to bring all the cabling back, and you've got these little slots right here that the cabling can fit in. And it's not terribly big a deal on this side. On this side, on the other hand, this motor cable just, it doesn't want to fit. You don't want to tear it, so, you know, do the best you can. There should be plenty of room, at least for now, so you should be okay. And you want to take a note of these 2 holes here, because that is where the screw holes are going to go on the skull. You see the little screw holes here? So we can slide this thing in just like this, and those holes should line up perfectly right there. And we're going to throw in 2 of the screws that came with this issue to hold it in place. And there you go. Skull is now in place. And wow, what an interesting look. Now technically that actually completes the end of this issue, but if you're like me, you can do a little bit extra and kind of test fit your face plate here, and it will slide in just like this. and you can get a look at what the Terminator skull is going to look like in the end. And isn't that fantastic? We're gonna take it back off now because we don't know what else is happening here, but there you go, and stage 21 is now complete. And here are the parts we get with stage 22. We have the right shoulder, woohoo! And then we have the right and left jaw connector A and right and left jaw connector B. Yes, they are reversed for some reason. And then we have 3 of these little tiny pins here, simply labeled jaw connector pins. Not sure what they're for. Let's find out. All right, we're gonna start this off with the set of right jaw connectors, and you'll notice there's a little peg here with a hole and something that'll fit over it. So it should slide just like this. And if in there correctly, you should be able to fit one of those little pins right through that hole there. Well, let's see if I can do that. And there you go. When all is said and done, we got the pin in there, so this should rotate freely and securely. All right, next up, we're gonna take a look. You get this hole here and this hole here. That is for these two. And then this hole right here is for this peg. So we're gonna wanna slide them in and test fit this thing and make sure it all goes in nice and neat. Should. There we go. All right, look at that. That actually looks pretty good. Now, once you're satisfied with the fit and then it's looking good, you want to take it back out again. And you're going to want to super glue the bottom peg only. Do not super glue these top ones or you'll restrict the motion in the jaw. So we go ahead and do that, and then we repeat all of these steps for the other side. All right. And there we go with the jaw connectors in place. Looking awesome. And now we are officially supposed to take the faceplate and slide that puppy in. So we'll just make sure it all fits again. And we have ourselves a Terminator skull. Oh, this thing is great. That actually completes stage 22, and we're not actually going to be using the shoulder here, so I guess that is saved for the next one. And here we are with the parts for stage 23. Yet another right shoulder joint and a right shoulder joint inner and a couple of screws. Okay, this one's gonna be one of those need to be careful types. First, you want to take this piece from the last issue and note the orientation. Okay, you've got these little slots in the top and bottom here, particularly this broken one right there, and these 3 holes in this alignment. Then you've got this gear. Now this gear is going to have to fit in here with all these teeth pointing, fitting into here. But there are 2 raised portions, and those have to be vertically aligned. So you have to carefully slot it in, and it should look like this whenever it's in. So you don't want to hold that in place. And now you take this shoulder joint. If you look, you've got the 2 screw holes here. That's going to line up with these 2 pieces here, just like that. And you're going to want to try and keep everything aligned as best you can. And then you're going to want to screw put screws into these 2 holes here to hold everything in place. All right, and that is what it'll look like when you're done. Now it's important to note that even with the screws fully tightened, this can still come out. So just keep an eye on this as you continue your build. Make sure that this alignment stays where it is. But this does conclude this stage. All right, here are the parts we get with stage 24. We have a right shoulder plate, and then we've got right hand ball joints A and B. It's important to note A is the one with the screw hole in it. We have the right hand muscle connectors and some screws. All right, the first thing we're going to do is assemble the ball joint. So basically just going to put the two halves together. And we're going to take one of the smaller screws that came with this pack. They're called PB screws. We're going to put that through there to secure it together. Look at that. Now we're going to pull out the hand that we assembled in previous issues. You'll notice this big hole right here. And that's where this thing's going to go. So it'll just fit right in there. And this is going to be fun, but we got to take one of the bigger screws and it's going to go right into that hole there to hold it in place. And there you have it. That ball joint ain't going anywhere. Alright, for this next bit, we're going to be attaching these sockets here. These 3 small sockets and this one larger socket. And they're going to attach to all these ball joints. So these are just push fits, so you just push them on. It is going to require a little bit of force. Make sure you got everything supported properly. Well, fairly self-explanatory there. So let's get to it. All right, look at that. Nice and easy. And that actually looks really awesome. All right, this next bit's gonna be fun. Basically, you've got these 4 springs here, all these cables. And if you look, hard to see, but you've got 4 little holes down in here going through the wrist and into the palm. And you've got to take these springs and 1 spring, 1 hole, and get them to all go through. All right, and when it's done, it should look a little something like that. How awesome is that? All right, this next bit's gonna be really tricky. They give you 4 of these little things, and there's a couple of items of note. Number 1 is that little rectangular peg here. Number 2 is the post. Now what you're supposed to do is take that post, put a little super glue on it, and shove it right down the hole in the spring. And then once the super glue dries, you kind of drag the spring out, and you can see there's a little rectangular hole here. And you got to super glue that rectangular peg into that little hole. And you got to do that 4 times for each of the muscle fibers here. And since we're using super glue, I don't think I'm going to be doing this on camera. Don't like to hold it and wait for it to dry while the camera's running, so let me skip to the end. And here it is completed. Really hard to see because everything's all silver, but you can see all the little muscle fibers, the springs, coming in and attaching in the appropriate spots. And once it's all dry, it's done correctly, you can get some good motion here on the wrist without them popping off or anything. So, well done. Looks great. And that actually completes stage 24. And here are the parts we get with stage 25. We've got the right shoulder spring, the right elbow pin, and these are all labeled right shoulder accessories, along with a number of screws. And we're going to kick things off by removing these 2 pieces from the sprue. Notice this one's got a slot, this one's got whatever you want to call that. And this will just fit right in, just like this. And we're gonna want to super glue them together. And there you are with the completed piece. Nice and assembled. Next up, we're gonna want to cut the remaining pieces off the sprue and then arrange them on this shoulder piece in this order. Bear in mind the seam on this one, that seam there, it's going to be facing away when looked at it from this orientation. And the rest will fit in this order. They are keyed pretty well, and they're only going to fit really in one way. And you guessed it, more super glue time! And here we have them, all glued in place. Next up, we're going to take the spring and it's going to fit inside this right here. Make sure that this is still in the proper alignment, of course. And get that puppy in just like that. And then we're going to take this and we're going to fit that over top. Now if you take a look, there's this little notched area here. That's going to fit over top of this pin. So, get it all nice and lined up. And make sure that it all fits. If it does, 3 screws. These are going to be the 6mm screws that came with this issue. And there you go, nice and tight. And unless I miss my guess, push it in, yep, and it'll turn, and then you can release to lock it in place. So, that's pretty cool. Next up, we're going to cut this piece from the sprue. And if you take a look, there's a couple of posts, a couple of holes, and a nice little cutout to show you exactly where it goes. So we line it up just like that, and you guessed it, more super glue. And there we go with that piece assembled. Sticking fine. I gotta tell you, I am not happy with the amount of glue this model has taken. But, one step at a time, let's move on to the next. For this next bit, I'll take this piece of the shoulder assembly, and you'll notice there are 3 raised areas here, 3 holes right in the center, so it's keyed and should fit just fine, just like that. We got 2 holes down there. That's where the 8mm screws are gonna go. So let's get this thing in. Alright, look at that. Next bit I'm not terribly happy about. First, you gotta cut this pipe off the sprue, and be careful, I didn't even realize this was on the sprue. It just kind of blended with the edge so well, I didn't even realize it. So I spent a good deal of time looking for it. But one end will go right in there, just like that. And you guessed it, we get to super glue it right there. But considering I have no idea what's going to attach at this end, this is as close as I can get, and it's not keyed, so there is some play in it. And so I'm gonna have to hold it like this until the super glue dries. Fingers crossed I get it right. Well, that is about as close to aligned as I can make it, and I hope that is the right alignment for it. And there we go, that is the assembly for this stage. We are now ready to move on to the next one. And here are the parts for stage 26. We got the left shoulder. This is called right elbow part. A couple of right elbow washers. This very, very, very tiny small cylinder is how they describe it. Some regular washers and an Allen key. Now this always surprises me. These builds expect you to have your own screwdriver, but they don't figure you can get your own Allen keys. Unreal. And 2 different types of screws. Okay, this stage is actually going to start with a little bit of disassembly. So we've got our right forearm here, and there are 2 screws right there that we need to take out and remove that piece. And there you go, nice and separated. Alright, next up, we're going to take these black washers here, and one is going to go right there, the other one is going to go in the other piece, right there, and of course, super glue time. Alright, and there you go. Important to note, this one fits flush, so make sure that you get that thing in there all the way. The next step actually says to take this pin here and put it through that hole there. However, it doesn't actually fit snug. It's pretty loose, it just falls right out. So they suggest actually holding off on this step until you hit step 10. So that's what we're gonna do. Next up, we're gonna start fitting the bicep here to the forearm. And this is going to be fun. On the bicep here, you'll notice that one of these has a U connector, a couple holes. The other one has 2 pins. You're going to want the one with the 2 pins here. And that is going to go into this lower hole right there. And just like that. And with that in place, we're actually going to replace this piece, and it should go through the other half of that, just like this. And then we'll replace the screws. All right, and with that attached, we can fit this in here pretty carefully. Alright, so it should fit something like this. The next part is going to be fun. This is, it says there's an indentation on one side, but that's not the case for me. But one hole is definitely larger than the other, so, and it looks like we're going to be using a larger hole on this side when you're holding the arm in this orientation. And basically it's going to fit over here. And we're going to put one of those Phillips head screws in there. But before we do, we need to get that cylinder in here and balance it out so that we can fit the arm over it while the cylinder's inside, or the screw will have nothing to hold on to. All right, look at that. But it is still coming out, so there's clearly one more piece missing. Alright, first things first, you want to prep one of your Allen head screws with a washer here, so it's ready to go. You want to take your arm, and from the outside arm, where you've got the larger hole, you're going to want to take that pin that you got, and it is actually keyed, and you want to shove it up through the middle here, all the way in, just like that. With that in place, you can take that Allen head screw that you just prepped and screw it in from this side. Alright, a couple things to note. First, this was a pain to get lined up, but once it is, it went in fairly easy. But if you tighten it too much, you're not going to be able to move the arm in any reasonable manner of force, and you're going to end up breaking some of these plastic pieces if you try. If it's too loose, it's not going to hold its position. But if you get it just right, you're going to be able to position the arm in whatever way you choose without worrying about damaging some of the other parts. So make sure you test it and test it and test it till you get it just to where you like it before you move on to the next stage. For this next part, you're going to want to take this piece. There's 2 pegs. See, there's 2 holes, and yes, you want to super glue it in. I did a test fit on this though, and had a wonderful time trying to get it back out. It really doesn't need super glue, but I mean, it's a little loose, but it stays. So it's really up to you. I'm gonna go ahead and glue mine in, but use whatever you desire. And with that in place, we have us a completed right arm. And how freaking awesome is this? The only thing I don't like is there's not enough tension on the wrist. So if it's too far over, see, it likes to fall like that. But other than that, you know, it stays okay. It's just not enough tension in that one bit. Man, this just looks incredible. This is awesome. I can't wait to see what's next. All right, before we actually get into stage 27, there was a little thing I missed when building out the elbow on this thing. Right in here, I was supposed to put 2 of the washers around the pin. I was able to loosen things up enough to be able to get this out and get those washers in. No damage done at all, so you can correct that after the fact. Good news. Moving on to stage 27, we have these parts. And this is the left shoulder plate, the left shoulder inserts, and some parts for the right shoulder. To kick things off, we're going to take this piece from the last stage, and we're going to put these little sockets in just like we did on the right side. And there you go, left side piece complete. Next up, we're going to cut these 2 pieces from the sprue, and if you take a look on this side, there are a couple of divots. That's going to face inside, and you're going to want to slide that in just like that. And of course, you're going to want to super glue it, but test fit it first to make sure it fits appropriately. All right, and there it is in place. Next up, we're going to want to bring this piece out, the right shoulder here, and you can see this giant kind of wall here. And this hole is just going to slide right on top. Once you've made sure that it fits appropriately, you're going to want to dab it with some glue, get it on there, make it permanent. And there you have it. Nice and glued in, never coming off again. And that completes stage 27. And here are the parts we have with stage 28. First we have the right shoulder plate, and this is, sadly, plastic. And it actually is really, really light plastic. I'm a little concerned about its durability, but, well, it is what it is. And then we have the left shoulder cog, the left shoulder spring, and then down here, we have the right shoulder cap with rod. A right shoulder cap is this thing, and right shoulder tube along with a few screws. All right, this next bit's gonna be kind of fun. You wanna take the right shoulder assembly that you've got done so far, and you'll notice on all of the little extrusions here, we got one that is a hollow tube. Kind of goes down both ends. Well, we're going to take the plastic tube that we got in this issue and we shove that down in there just like that. Then we take the shoulder itself, we're going to line up the holes. We're going to take this piece with the rod, and that's going to come in from the top and just hopefully easily slide all the way down through everything. All right, well, easily was definitely not the right word to use there. That was a lot tougher than it seemed. You gotta be careful, man. There were a couple times it felt like that rod wanted to snap. Thankfully it did not. Everything was good. And then you've got your lower cap that's gonna go in there. And no glue this time. It's supposed to be just a friction fit. and in it goes. All right, and there is enough motion in here to let you play with the shoulder blade a bit. That looks great. Next up, we're going to be putting this assembly together, and this is much like on the right-hand side, but these are kind of reversed. This one here that's a little sunken in, looks kind of like the bottom of an I, the capital I, and then you've got your indented thing here pointing off to the right. In that orientation, this with the little raised edges is going to be up and down, just like that. And then we line this thing up with the screw holes in the indented ones, just like that. And we throw in a couple of the screws that came with this issue. And there you go, nice and assembled. And that actually completes stage 28. And would you look at that, we managed to get through an entire stage and didn't need the super glue once. And here are the parts we get with stage 29. All of the left shoulder parts, from the plate to the accessories. You're going to need the spring and the left shoulder build thus far. And this will all go together exactly the same way as the right shoulder, so we'll just skip to the end. And here we are at the end of stage 29 with more of the left shoulder completed, and the spring works just fine. And here are the parts we get with stage 30, and these are just the left hand equivalent to the right parts that we assembled before, and they will be assembled onto the left shoulder assembly in exactly the same way. So through the magic of editing, and here we are with those parts assembled, glued, and screwed. And here we are at the end of pack 3. And we have ourselves a right shoulder, most of a left shoulder, the right arm, and most of the head. This thing is certainly coming together and looking awesome. And I simply cannot wait to see what's next. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait till pack 4. So I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And we will see you next time. Have a great day.